Good afternoon. Let's get out now. Grab your Bibles. No. Once again, as my colleagues have already said, we want to thank you for this opportunity to join us in this conversation. And I know you guys had a great time listening to President Clinton. President, Y'all had a great time. Secretary of State should be the President Clinton and our panelists. And give them a great round of applause for. And now it is my opportunity to introduce you to Senator Wyden, who is a great friend of AFT. He spends a lot of time in his home state of Oregon, visiting with our Oregon affiliates. And when we called them, they gave us a lot of talking points about him. And I'm not going to say all the great things that they said about him, but they love him in Oregon. And so, but for this opportunity, as he begins to engage in this conversation of the future of democracy and the like, we know that he is a great opponent of H.R. 1. H.R. 1, which is the Dignity of the Voting Rights Act. And as a note, a commercial, the AFT Human Rights Committee will be in Selma on October the 14th. We're going to walk from Selma to Montgomery, where our conference will be. In fact, if you want to join us, please see me after that. But Senator Wyden strongly supports and advocates for H.R. 1, which defends and protects the rights of each and every one of us to vote. And that is very critical to this conversation. I have great other things to say about him, but as not to prolong the program and give him an opportunity to, one, introduce himself, but when you're amongst friends who are doing great things, I want to give him the opportunity to say everything that he needs to say. And so could you join me now as we bring to the stage Senator Wyden's great state of Oregon. Man, how you doing, sir?
You are so kind. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're going to make this a filibuster-free zone today, okay? I so appreciate the chance to be with all of you, to thank the Shanker Institute for inviting me, and particularly to have a chance to be here with Secretary Clinton. Where is Secretary Clinton? Folks, Secretary Clinton, throughout her time in public service, when there is a job to be done, when there is a challenge ahead, she just steps up and says, we're going to get out there and we're going to mobilize. That's what she's been saying on this issue. She has been key to making sure we have this NBA all-star team of individuals. But I want you to know that when I have heard her speak and focus on this issue, she understands what's on the line here. Let's give Secretary Clinton a big round of applause. I can't hear it very well. I'd like to hear it a little bit better. Secretary Clinton, I can almost hear it. It's coming through now. And we all know that what Secretary Clinton has focused on is a topic that's about as urgent and timely as you could find, and that is defending American democracy. And I thought what I would do is start by telling you a little bit about how I spent my summer vacation. And I'm sure you're going to say, oh, God, Ron's going to talk about the Oregon coast, and he's going to talk about Bend and climbing Mount Hood, and we did do all of that. But I also want to mention that a few weeks ago, I went to the White Hat Hacker Convention in Las Vegas, which is known as DEF CON. And I represented that day 1% of the United States Senate. And I just thought it was important, even if I was only 1%, to be there in solidarity with these folks, because these white hat hackers are the good guys. They're the ones who work with governments and companies. Some of them are just freelancing, and a decent chunk of them are students and even teenagers. And working out of the voting village that they had at DEF CON, they were working to hack the equipment that runs our country, and specifically our elections, to determine vulnerabilities and get the information to those who can fix the problem. I went to Las Vegas because I frankly wanted to see, as we head into this crucial month, I'm sure Secretary Clinton told you, this is really the crucial month, folks, because what you do this fall gives you enough time to be ready for 2020. And I wanted to see just how easy it was a few weeks ago to hack e-poll books, voting machines, and other important parts of election infrastructure. I talked with a number of the young people younger than my children, who are security researchers and cybersecurity experts. They showed how simple it was for hackers to compromise these election machines, to alter votes, to disrupt ballot printers, and particularly to meddle with registration systems. Teenagers at the DEF CON voting village were actually able to demonstrate how they could hack the machine made by the company that Bob Mueller singled out in his report as being hacked by Russia. There was an e-poll book hacked so completely that there were young people playing video games like Doom on it. And I spent this time in the voting village and was just thinking about what I was going to say walking out, and I said to myself, how I wish that Mitch McConnell could have been there to see all of these young people defeating the security of these machines with such ease. And I just hope that now, as we move to these crucial few weeks, is that we make it clear that depending on hackable voting machines, like I saw in Las Vegas, is the election security equivalent of protecting our nuclear codes with a child safety lock. So that's the warning that we want to get out. We want to get out the warning that this isn't something abstract. These are serious threats that we're going to face in 2020. I sit on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. My older child calls it the so-called Intelligence Committee. And I will tell you this, and I'm not going to get into anything classified, this is not just going to be the Russians, folks. This will not just be the Russians. We are going to find a host of hostile foreign actors in 2020 who are going to make what happened in 2016 look like child's play. So that is what the urgency is all about here. And the fact is, as I saw again in Las Vegas, too many of the election systems have the security of Swiss cheese, and yet Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump have done virtually nothing to shore up our defenses against this array of hostile foreign individuals, governments, and a host of parties. I mentioned that we have a host of foreign hackers poised and ready to make the election interference, this time far more serious than anything we have seen. And I think it is important to couple that kind of assessment with the fact that a tide of voter suppression continues to crash across the country. States are accelerating in too many places the barriers to voting for people of color, working Americans, and seniors. So these twin attacks on the legitimacy of our government present as serious a threat as I know to the underpinnings of the American experiment that I have seen in my time in public service. We all understand that the foundation of American democracy is the notion that a government and elected officials are going to represent the will of the people. And I understand that Secretary Clinton focused on that this morning. Well, we do that with a quaint kind of approach. It's called free elections. If an election isn't free and fair, then basically the underpinnings of this 200-year experiment start falling apart. If it's harder for some people to vote than others, or if foreign hackers can exploit security weaknesses to interfere with voting machines, then again, the system starts falling apart. And especially if Americans don't have faith that the government was chosen fairly, I think people, for example, if that was the case this election, get up this morning and they say, what's the 200-year experiment all about? What does it really mean? If we're waking up right after an election and we wonder if the people we voted for were the ones who got elected and the system was working in a fair way. So the next few weeks are about one thing, and that is saying we will not let this happen on our watch. That's what I hope everybody will walk out of here and say. We're not going to let this happen on our watch. So today I'm going to give you two examples of how to defend American democracy. One that we take a special pride of, and I heard that the AFT checked in with Oregonians. I appreciated the fact they didn't, my friends at home didn't go into my shady past. But among other things, I'm the nation's first mail-in United States senator. The nation's first senator elected by mail. And we've given every American the option to vote at home and ensuring that every election across the country is secure against foreign hacking. And it seems to me taking the steps I'm going to outline will go a long way towards guaranteeing our people's constitutional right to vote, and that they're the best way to ensure that Americans, not foreign hackers, choose our elected officials. First, a note about some of the ridiculous roadblocks to voting. Every 4 years, you turn on your televisions, you watch on your phones, you pick up information so many different ways, and you see reports across the country of long lines, malfunctioning machines, voters turned away because of problems with their registration, and just about every ridiculous excuse that somebody can come up with to make it hard to cast a ballot. In too many states, politicians have an attitude that working Americans, people of color, young people, and those with disabilities should have to practically do somersaults to be able to exercise their constitutional right to vote. Just last week, a new report found that a handful of states closed nearly 1,700 polling places since 2014. Texas, Arizona, and I'm sure you're surprised with this, Georgia led the pack. Now, fewer polling places means fewer people vote. When fewer Americans vote, we all know what happens. Special interests, multinational corporations, they win. Working families, people of modest incomes, young people trying to get ahead, they're all the losers in that kind of scenario. Voting rights in this country, and I say this charitably, have become a kind of crazy quilt of restrictions, a hodgepodge of bizarre rules that make it more costly for voters and states and individuals to exercise freely the right to vote. So, in my home state, we've had it now for more than 20 years, we've fixed this. We vote by mail. We vote at home with automatic voter registration. I have proposed taking the Oregon system national and making it possible for everybody in America to get a ballot at their house and to vote at home. Here's how it works. Each time a voter uses their Department of Motor Vehicles, the new information automatically updates the voter rolls. Accurate registration is a breeze. You can always opt out should you choose to. Voters get their ballots in the mail 2 or 3 weeks ahead of Election Day, which leaves plenty of time to fix any problems with registration or ballots that do crop up. States can keep their current polling practices if they wish, but states that choose a full vote-at-home system are going to see their election costs drop. They're going to see turnout rise. They're going to see people ecstatic over the fact they've got a couple of weeks to conveniently think about their votes, for example, like when they're in the bathtub or something like that. And also, we have not seen evidence of fraud. Oregon, Washington, and Colorado already vote at home for all elections. Hawaii is going to move at home in 2020. Are there people from Colorado here, out of curiosity? Well, if you have friends in Colorado, thank them in the days ahead for prohibiting barcodes yesterday. That's another big win for election security. Oregon, Washington, and Colorado already vote at home for all elections. Hawaii is going to move in 2020. In Oregon, we have been lucky to have had it. And to give you an idea about how absurd some of this politics is, early on in the 1990s, when there was discussion of vote by mail in the state of Oregon, almost all the Republicans liked it, and almost all the Democrats, other than myself and our Secretary of State, Phil Kiesling, didn't like it. And the theory was Republicans said, our people are really smart. They're going to be able to figure out those ballots, and they're going to get them in on time, and this vote by mail thing is going to be good for us. And the Democrats said, no, vote by mail, that's going to be bad. Our people won't know how to use it, and they won't be able to fill out a ballot and all this kind of thing. Let's be careful about it. Well, Oregon voted to do it. I won that special election in 1996. I became Oregon's first Democrat to be elected to the United States Senate in more than 33 years. Then there was a huge about-face. Democrats said, we love vote by mail. And Republicans said, no, we don't like vote by mail anymore. Well, the voters said, nuts on this. And they put it on the ballot. And like 70% of the people of both political parties, of philosophies all across the political spectrum, says, we want vote by mail. It works. It's more efficient. We like the convenience. We don't have problems with fraud. And that's what's happening all over the country, a proven kind of winner. There's another reason that voting by mail makes a lot of sense, and that is paper ballots marked by hand are hugely more secure than voting with hackable electronic voting machines. This is critical because I will tell you, the hackers are coming in 2020. And as of this afternoon, I don't believe we're even close to prepared to stop them. And I just want to mention something that happened a few weeks ago. A briefing was scheduled for all senators. Secretary Clinton, of course, remembers all those in the secure facilities. It was on election security. And because it was classified, I can't go into any of the discussions of what took place. But when it was done, one Republican senator after another walked out and said, nothing to see here. no problems. We're on top of everything. Elections are going to be secure in 2020. All went out to the microphones, all the big names. I didn't say anything quite like that because I knew in a few days what was going to happen, and that was the Associated Press did an exhaustive investigation across the country and found that scores of systems were using outdated Windows 7. And basically, they were using systems that were, on their way to the graveyard in a matter of weeks. But boy, you should have seen everybody in their dark suits and everything parade up to the microphone and say everything was hunky-dory. So that's what we're dealing with. And cybersecurity experts have been shouting about this issue for what seems like eons. Unfortunately, a lot of members dozed off over those kind of briefings, and the message didn't sink in. But certainly this unwillingness to realize how serious election security is laid the groundwork for the incredible interference that took place in 2016. And it wasn't just the DNC hacks and the email leaks. It's a list of attacks by foreign actors and vulnerabilities here at home. You start with the voting machines from ES&S, the biggest voting machine company in the country, that for years came with pre-installed remote access software. Folks, remote access software is the technological equivalent of picking up your ballot boxes and putting them in the Kremlin. All right? So not only is this a technological disaster, but ES&S lied to the American people. They lied to me. They lied to the Congress. They lied repeatedly with respect to what they were doing. And they first said, well, it wasn't but a few machines. Then it turned out to be quite a few more. Then we started seeing them all over the country. Then they said they'd gotten rid of them. We still saw them. So I'll tell you, one of the biggest opponents to the values that we subscribe to, the values of reform and protecting everybody's vote, one of the biggest set of opponents is the voting machine lobby. These people basically think they are above the law. Above the law. Nobody ever even asked them any questions. So I sent them some questions. They were really radical, like, do you have a security person? Does the person have a name? Does the person have a contact number? So these were really complicated election security questions. Complete stonewalling of the Congress. And this stonewalling and the refusal of Congress to take the voting machine lobby on has had real consequences. Russia hacked an election vendor called VR Systems in the summer of 2016. VR Systems machines in North Carolina malfunctioned on election day that year, and one polling place had such extensive problems it was shut down for hours. It took 2.5 years to get the Department of Homeland Security to even begin investigating what happened. I mentioned the Windows 7 issue, so you have a sense of the dimensions there. The Associated Press in this nationwide review found that the vast majority of 10,000 election jurisdictions were using this system, which in tech terms is going to have end of life in a few months. All of them are vulnerable to hacking. ES&S and HART, two of the biggest vendors, use this vulnerable software that I just described for all of their voting systems. So that means elections officials across America are buying election systems that will be out of date and vulnerable to the hacking the minute the box gets open. That seems pretty weird, even by Washington standards. 5 states still exclusively use hackable paperless voting machines. 9 other states still use paperless machines in some counties. So it's not exactly surprising that Russia targeted election systems in all 50 states in 2016. In 2017, we began to work, a group of us in the House and the Senate, on legislation that would become the PAVE Act. This was a piece of legislation I introduced with a number of my colleagues, many who are running for president now, and it was the first bill ever introduced in Congress to mandate the 2 key priorities that experts recommend across the board. And these experts are not partisan people. Paper ballots, hand-marked paper ballots, and routine post-election risk-limiting audits. I expanded and refined the bill over a number of months to mandate federal cybersecurity standards for election systems, basically what's called cybersecurity hygiene, and to address specific vulnerabilities that cyber experts discovered in voting machines. In June, we had a real breakthrough. Special credit is deserved to Speaker Pelosi and Chair Zoe Lofgren, chair of the key committee in the House, who engineered the passage in the House of the SAFE Act, which includes significant portions of the bill I just described, the SAFE Act. So now the SAFE Act and every other bill on this issue is still being blocked in the Senate by the person who somehow, some way, has convinced himself that he should be helping Russia with respect to compromising election security, Mitch McConnell. And I'm going to close with my kind of take on why he may be doing this. A reasonable person, of course, is going to ask, how does it make any sense to send election security to a legislative graveyard? Is voters of all political persuasions are hurt by the kinds of problems that I've been describing. Russia hacked the 2016 election. The 2016 election turned out pretty well for Republicans. So has this been on Mitch McConnell's mind? Ask yourself. They were able to unify control of government, passed a lot of legislation, confirmed a whole lot of judges over my opposition to lifetime seats on the federal bench. So you might say, why change anything about a system that let Republicans consolidate power in 2016? If Russian interference leads to more of those far-right policies and more far-right Republicans being elected, it doesn't exactly look like Mitch McConnell is hanging crepe over that. He seems to think that's pretty much okay. And certainly, it seems this is the price Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump are willing to accept, what amounts to a bargain with hostile forces to keep a firm grip on their political power. One of the ways Republicans have held on to power is by engaging in voter suppression. It often seems to them stopping Democrats from voting ought to be priority business. And one of the ways they accomplish that is by making it difficult to vote. They shutter polling places in communities of color. They make it harder to register to vote. They shorten polling hours. They find a way to make the lines at polling places really, you got my drift, long. So, this of course relates to voting machines. Hand-marked ballots are easier and quicker for people to use than a touch screen. People get in and out of their polling places faster. The lines get shorter. Those images you see on TV of people standing in the heat with their children wondering if they're going to get a peanut butter sandwich before breakfast tomorrow. I mean, those pictures are just etched in our brain of those families and their low-income families clinging to their child, who's thirsty and tired and wants to know where the sandwiches are, and mom and dad are just hoping to be able to vote, to be able to tell their child one day, I was there getting counted for you, for your generation. Well, you don't see those pictures in Oregon, by the way. Just saying. And obviously, long lines keep people from voting, and historically low turnout elections favor the Republicans. So, that's sort of the same old song you hear sung in Washington. Anytime a Republican wants to block an important legislative priority. Election security is not an issue for the Congress. It's an issue for the states. And what a surprise. That was pretty much the identical language Republicans used to oppose the Voting Rights Act and to try to put the restraints on advancing justice and dignity, which is what the civil rights legislation, of course, was all about. In this context, when Republicans argue for states' rights, they're arguing for the rights of states to suppress the vote. Finally, part of the reason that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans have blocked election security is because the voting machine lobby, as I've said, just flexes its muscles every single time we've got, an important vote. Well, don't you think it's time to take from the clutches of the voting machine lobby, take our democracy back? I think that's what this is about, folks. The voting machine lobby has proven they're not going to protect our democracy. In effect, their policies do more for Russia than they do for American voters. And I'm just going to close with this. Political change, and nobody knew that better than Al Schenker and the AFT. Political change doesn't amount to kind of trickle down. It doesn't start in Washington, D.C., and then trickle down to the grassroots. It almost always is grassroots up. And that's what we need to do here in these next crucial few weeks. I just came from doing a call. 40 rallies all over the country taking place today and tomorrow, trying to mobilize people. Secretary Clinton and I have been talking about various ways in which we can get state officials to be involved in this, Democrats and Republicans. And what we really need is for all of you to walk out of here and be the equivalent of election security Paul Revere's, where you go out and you go home and you say to all of your elected officials, your federal officials, your state officials, your local officials, your candidates, what are you doing? What are you doing to protect our democracy? And the reason I say this is, yes, we have only a few weeks. Yes, I know that we've got a giant legislative boulder in front of us on the floor of the United States Senate in Mitch McConnell. But I also know the American people can move really fast when they think that vital needs, when vital American priorities and crucial American values are on the line. They can move in a hurry. So if senators, just speaking hypothetically, when they're home this weekend and they're at the grocery store or they're at the football game or they're at the church and they see some of you or your friends or people that you remember from your wedding, or you went to school with them, and you took a tuna fish sandwich from them, but you apologize later. They go to their senator and they say, Senator, I need you to go to Mitch McConnell. I need you to go to Mitch McConnell and say, Mitch, my people at home won't accept any more stonewalling. They won't accept any more of this one excuse after another for failing to protect American democracy when every member of the intelligence community has told us this threat is coming. This isn't in dispute, folks. You have to take my word for it. I know that I'm not a household word. I'm barely a household word in my own household. But I'll tell you something. The intelligence community, in open hearings, has said this threat is at hand. This threat is real. And as of right now, I guess what we're saying is the Russians and whatever hostile power it is, with their armies and their cybersecurity hackers, we're going to say, we'll take them on with the county IT guy. The county IT guy will go out there and beat them. Well, I have enormous respect for local elected officials, and nobody's talking about replacing them. What we're talking about is supplementing their good work, ensuring that they have a framework that's actually going to help us defeat those who would try to snatch our democracy from us. The time is short. The stakes are great. AFT's been in a lot of big fights in the past. I just want you to know I joined Secretary Clinton in being your partner for this battle in the weeks ahead. Let's go out and win this fight so crucial to American democracy. Thank you.